You are listening to the Global CTE Podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisholm.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Global CTE Podcast. I am your host, Sylvester Chisholm. This is the place where we interview the best, the brightest, the movers, the shakers, and the innovators. Today is no different. I have my good friend, Dr. Chris Mcneil, here on the show. Now, let me tell you about Chris. Dr. Mcneil is the esteemed Director of Career and Tech Education at Kansas City Public Schools. With a diverse background as a principal at every educational level from elementary to high school, Chris is deeply committed to shaping the future of education. He stands out not only for his innovative leadership in CTE, but also for his remarkable community contributions. Recently, he was crowned as the Wahl Man of the Year. Chris has been recognized for his extraordinary community work, earning a grand prize of $20,000 and additional $5,000 for his charity, Books and Barbers. This unique initiative reflects his passion for youth mentorship, offering haircuts, books, and guidance to elementary students within the Kansas City Public School District. Under his leadership, KC Public has been a front runner in providing college and career-ready curriculum, starting from middle school and extending to high school. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, that was quite the introduction, man. Thank you. This is a dream come true to be able to talk to you on your podcast, man. I've been following you for a while. So thank you for being here, man.
Man, I love it. I'm super excited to connect with you again, to talk CTE. Whenever we find ourselves in the same room, it's a conversation around education and innovation and all the interesting things you're moving forward, man. So super excited to talk about what's happening with the work you're doing with KC Public, the Wahl Man of the Year stuff. But before we get into that, how do you get here? What is your origin story?
Man, that's a great question, man. I think for me, it really started just with a conversation from my grandmother. And so my grandmother was a person that lived across the street from us. And so she would get all the grandkids together and she would often ask us, what do we want to be when we grow up? And so she would just ask me, she said, well, Chris, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a professional athlete. She'd be like, that's not it. And so she would ask me every year. And finally I said, Granny, I don't know what I want to do or what it's called, but I just want to help people. He said, baby, that's what you're going to do. And so through the course of my life, just kind of going through, and the teachers were some of the most impactful people in my life. And so every successful person in the world has a teacher story who impacted their world. And so I went to school focused on business. And so I thought I was going to be, I wanted to be a sports agent, majored in marketing and kind of sports entertainment. I thought I was going to be, the next Black Jerry Maguire. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. And so what ended up happening was just, I did some cool marketing campaigns while I was in school. And just in my last year there, I actually helped to teach the foundations of marketing course and just fell in love with teaching and education, and then realized that's something I was really passionate about. And then through the course of my career, I just worked for a number of nonprofits, American Red Cross, Boy Scouts of America. And, I found myself a lot of times in classrooms, giving speeches, kind of encouraging students, and just fell in love with it, got into adult education and really caught that bug. And then subsequently, man, just continued to work. So went from a teacher to program specialist in CTE, and then just kind of worked my way up to, principal at all the levels and now director of CTE. So it definitely all started with just a question from my grandmother as to what you wanted to be. And it really spoke to my purpose. What do I want to do, right? I want to be impactful and be able to, help shape and encourage the next generation of leaders. And so that's my origin story.
I love it. And I love that you started with grandma. One of my previous guests, he started with his grandfather. And I asked him this, so I'm going to ask you too, because he gave a super heartfelt answer. What is the best piece of advice that your grandmother gave you?
Best piece of advice is keep a good name. That if your word don't mean nothing, you don't mean nothing. And so she always tell me, if you have an opportunity to make more money and it's in conflict with keeping a good name, always keep a good name. Because if you have a good name, you can always get more money. And so for me, it's always been about just having solid character and trying to do my best. Although I'm not perfect in everything, but I just try to be a person of integrity, and I try to work extremely hard. So my folks so my grandfather came from Mississippi and kind of worked his way to the big city, and so hard work was always a part of us. And so we had a hog farm, and we grew our vegetables and all that kind of stuff. And so I always tell people I feel like I lived in two different worlds. And so I would get up first thing in the morning, go into the hog farm and feeding the hogs and, plowing the fields and all this kind of stuff. And so hard work was always a part of it. You put in a hard day's work, and don't let anybody outwork you, and really be committed to adding value. So, that was the best advice, just keeping a good name and make sure that your character is intact, because it'll take you the rest of the way. Because talent takes you to a certain level, but it's your character who's going to keep you there.
Wow, this is not how I expected to start the podcast, but I am loving the grandmotherly and grandfatherly wisdom. Yeah. And it's interesting to see, as I'm reflecting on the picture you just painted of like Chris as a kid growing up, to see how you have navigated these different levels of leadership, and you can't do that. You can't rise to this position as an administrative leader, of a large school district, without keeping a good name. So I know you're making your grandma proud with you standing on that one, man. That's all right. And then also the interesting agriculture CTE connection.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Man, I was doing CTE before I even realized I was doing that. Initially, when you plow in the field, you go into the hog farm first thing in the morning. You don't like it as much, but just kind of the work ethic and what you learn, and be able to speak to different people, because I can talk to farmers and people in agriculture, because in part and parcel, like, I lived I was in that world, right? And so we not only was in the agriculture field just to make money, but it was literally our food on the table as well, to kind of supplement what we didn't have from a financial standpoint. And so it was a game changer for us.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, as we think about career tech education and the conversation of it, nationally, the perception of it, it touches so many things. It touches the agriculture side. It touches automotive, but it also touches, hospitality and nursing, and, being a physician, or cybersecurity, or, all of those things, the careers of the future as well. It's making me think now, when you reflect back on those early CTE experiences to who you are now as a director of CTE, who is CTE for?
Man, that's a phenomenal question, and thank you for asking that question. CTE, very simply, is for everyone, right? And so if you look at how career tech ed is really designed, and so if you look at the clusters, so there's 16 unique clusters that incorporates pretty much every field, every industry. And so obviously you got, agriculture, which, really it goes back to the Smith-Hughes Act, kind of where it all kind of started with, with FFA, and then it just kind of expand over. And so career tech ed, again, is for everybody. So you can look at the STEM field, you look at agriculture, you look at business, you can look at technology, pretty much any area, the healthcare field, any area, is CTE. And so it's for everybody. Anybody who wants to add value to society and make a living, and be successful, CTE is for them.
What are your thoughts on this? Has been a common conversation on the podcast. what are your thoughts on how do we kind of shift the narrative or change the perception that, because some people still think CTE or career tech education is a lesser alternative than college, and maybe not fully understand all of the post-secondary opportunities that exist for students through career tech education.
Yeah, so I think for me, I can't get the quote down all the way, but essentially it was talking about just the value that people add to society. And so it compared a philosopher to a plumber, right? And so you need both, right? And so you could have this this very high thinking, person who can, philosophize. Mm-hmm. But if you have leaky faucets, you don't have a proper plumbing system, we're all going to suffer from that. And so it's elevating all of the career professions, right? And so growing up, it was always, if you wanted to be successful, you had to say, I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, right? And those are phenomenal professions. But being a plumber, being in the IT space is incredibly important. And being able to elevate and give prominence to all the different fields, right? Because there's opportunities for people to add value and to make a really handsome living, with these post-secondary, credentials, right? And so whether it's, I think about a program that we have in Kansas City Public Schools, it's a water management program. And so we teach students about just, water treatment and how to, make sure that we, have, healthy water and maintain a healthy water system throughout, our city. And that's incredibly important, right? And it is one of those jobs where you got to get your hands dirty in some instances. But these folks can make well over six figures. And you're talking about 18, 19-year-old students. I remember me coming out of college with a bachelor's degree with a ton of debt. And my starting salary was $32,000. And I thought, and in my word, I'm like, oh, I'm balling, but I can only, and I'm 23, Yeah. And you're an 18-year-old, making anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 right out the gate with, with overtime working in the water industry. And not only this, it's not just about the money, but it's just like, man, you're a part of keeping our environment, our society safe. What's more important than water, right? Yes. And so again, for me, it is really all about, it's not just pushing against the notion that, CTE is, it used to, people felt like it was for students who weren't going to go to college. It's really elevating all these professions and giving exposure to students in the broader community around, the opportunities that are available. There's a lot more than just being, a doctor, a lawyer, or being an athlete. It is, how do you run, how do you do the electricity or build up these stadiums, or be the person who's doing the multimedia and the digital design and doing the marketing and the digital marketing and all these different pieces. How do you keep school systems safe from a cyber standpoint? Like, what is that cybersecurity in a financial institution and all these different things? Again, career technical education definitely has a branding issue that we have to continue to just talk about. But again, those 16 cluster areas really encompasses every career field, every strand that you can even imagine. And so if you want to be, a valuable asset to society, CTE is most certainly for you.
Exposure is a word I'm hanging my hat on from what you just said. How do you do it in your district in terms of best practices of early exposure for students so that they can find themselves in the work? I think that's also super important, is starting like with uncovering that passion. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I see myself in construction, or I see myself in healthcare or hospitality. Talk to me about that part.
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate just with great leadership in Kansas City Public Schools, where we actually build out what is called a K-12 continuum, right? So what does it look like? What do we do in elementary, middle, and high school to set them up for that win after they leave our place? And so when we're looking at kind of the elementary school, it's all about discovery, who I am, what are my skill sets, and then when you get to that middle school, how do we connect those skill sets and what am I good at to potential career fields? And then once you get in that secondary space, it's all about giving you those meaningful experiences. We're really blessed to be a part of the Real World Learning Initiative. And so where we're trying to expose students to that every student will earn a market value asset by 2030. So 100% of our Kansas City school students, the goal is that they'll earn at least one market value asset. So market value asset could be a number of things. It could be at least 9 college credit hours. Students can earn an industry recognized credential. And so think about an industry recognized credential as a portable stamp of approval by given industries to say that this person has a certain level of competency in this particular area. So think about for CNAs getting that CNA certification, look at the cybersecurity pieces, different licensures associated with that, multimedia, having an Adobe suite already in your back pocket. These are all the things that, CTE offers students. And again, the students are going to come out of school with these credentials who's going to be job ready and marketable and have that competitive advantage without the student loan debt. And so those are the two. And so then we think about that third big rock being kind of that work experience. And so that could be the internships or client projects. And so those client projects are, a group of students or a classroom will work with a business to help solve a real problem. So we did anything from, working on kind of building marketing campaigns for local businesses, to partnering with, food shelters to be able to provide food to some of our food insecure populations. And then lastly, the last piece is the entrepreneurial experiences. And so it's teaching students how to, really, start a business or think about a passion project. How can I create a positive change in my environment? And so we've done stuff from things like, increasing awareness for minorities to donate blood. Because typically, students of color, people of color really have some concerns around donating blood, but it's incredibly important, especially given, the different issues that we have in our community, sickle cell disease and stuff like that. And so it's incredibly important for us to be able to educate, the broader community, but specifically targeting people of color on how to donate blood. And so these are all different type of projects and entrepreneurial experiences that we're trying to help to expose students to, give them those assets by the time that they graduate. And again, for these things to happen, it has to be that K-12 continuum. Again, it's critically important that we start as early as possible. You talking about kindergarten, it is for the different professions, and then doing that skills assessment and making these things and having agilities training and to say, okay, this is what I'm good at, right? And then let's start making these connections. And so the other pieces that we're really focused on is creating an ICAP, an individual career and academic plan for students, to kind of help guide their way. So, okay, you're interested in this, here's your skill set. Let's kind of give you a roadmap to get to the end point. And I don't know if you're anything like me, high school, trying to make a decision about what you want to do as a career is a bit challenging. Because I remember when I got in college, man, I changed I was an urban planner. I was in engineering. I dabbled in music. To only come to graduate with a marketing degree, only to find myself as an educator, right? But I didn't have all of those experiences along the way. The cool thing about career and tech ed is, and how we set it up is, I have multiple at bats. One thing I love about this market value asset thing is because it gives students an opportunity to be exposed, right? And sometimes I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I have this kind of experience, and I get this valuable knowledge of, I hate doing this, right? And that's value added, right? Versus going all the way to school and paying all these thousands of dollars only to find out then when it costs so much more that this is not what I want to do. And you also have similarly those students with those aha moments and you see it happening and they do and they like, holy cow, I never knew, right? They took a chance on taking this particular course and they just fall in love with it and they do extraordinary things. So
I think that is so powerful what you said, that the exposure is a both and for the student to try to find themselves in the work and the career pathway, but then also to challenge their thoughts like, oh no, I won't do construction. It's like, well, hold on now, I don't, or yeah, I want to be a nurse, a doctor. It's like, well, you're struggling with the blood part. Like this isn't for me. So like for them to recognize that earlier than later, because you're making me even reflect on my own personal journey. Like I thought I was going to be a dentist. So I have a degree in biology from
Mm.
Ohio State. But when I reflect back, my entire journey was around entrepreneurship. Like in my free time, like on the snow day, I wasn't sleeping in. I was knocking on people's doors to try to shovel snow, or the kid who was selling candy at school. But there was no elementary entrepreneurship program for me to see that. And growing up in a house of like, I think about my mother, like she's that perfect. She had that aha moment early. She was 12 and she knew what she wanted to do. She was braiding hair. She's a cosmetologist, and she knew what she wanted to do ever since she was a little girl. So much so, you appreciate this. This is funny. She told me, I don't know how she found this information, but so she's making her own money, buying her own school clothes, everything, right? Like
Mm.
she's like, this is it for me. She found out that you only needed an eighth grade education to go to cosmetology school at the time. I don't know if it's the same way, but she was trying to skip. I'm like, Mom, you were trying to go pro out of middle school. I'm like, she's like, I'm done. Like, I don't need the high school part. I'm like, yeah, like, let my grandmother was not having it, but she's, still to this day, 40 years owning a hair salon and putting two kids through college.
Man,
You know,
I love that story, right? I love that story for a myriad of reasons. I love kind of the barber and cosmetology industry in general, right? But it's another thing. How oftentimes that when students will discover, if we give them those opportunities to discover, their passion or their purpose or what they're good at. And then sometimes we put these boxes on them. You can't. Like, no, this person, let's versus this, let's develop in it, right? And so let's cultivate that. Like, give you more experiences to be able to do it and to partner with people, and then having people who's doing the work that you can come alongside, right? And then another piece is that how can we not only give them kind of the work experiences, but give them the people who they can connect with in their sense of community in that network, which is incredibly important. And so as the adage goes, it's not what you know, but who you know, but even more so, who knows you, who can speak well of you, right? And it really speaks to that network. And it's incredibly important that they see people in that space who's doing that work, who's experts in the field that they can identify with. It looks like them. And so one of our areas that we really focus on is kind of those non-traditional students. How can we get students exposed to programming that they historically maybe wouldn't be interested in or have access to, right? And so those non-traditional students, those are the students that are working or training in a profession that is less than 25% of that gender in that total field. So we look at stuff like women in construction or the auto tech, auto collision industry, and really focusing on and elevating the fact that, although this is, a heavy male populated field, there's a space for you, and you can be extremely successful, and you can add value and do incredible work. That's kind of what I like about what we're doing, particularly at the Area Career Center,
okay.
is having
Is that the
those.
manual? Is that Okay.
Yep. So at Manual Career and Technical Center is our area career center that's based out of Kansas City Public Schools, and we really focus on kind of those non-traditional student areas, and it's important because we put those people in front of the students, and so we have females in construction when we go on our recruitment events and letting the young ladies know this particular industry, and there is not only a space for you, but you're welcome to be in here and encouraged to be in this space. I know some of my assistant director and my manager of real world learning, who are just phenomenal women. So, shout out to Mrs. Erica Mabian and Miss Crystal Everett, and also our CTE coordinator, Dr. Tyra Nesbitt. They are just the most incredible leaders and thought partners. But there's a special project that they've been working on with Sporting KC, which is our soccer team. Okay. And so our female soccer professional team. And so not only were they kind of exposing the students to kind of the athletic industry, but also on the construction side of the house, you have all the project managers who's building this project, being females in that construction space who's leading the way, which is how powerful is that, right?
Wow.
Being able to tell that story, being able to show our young ladies, everybody, to say, look who's running this major project in our city. You can, every time you drive down the highway, you'll see it, and you kind of see that, these are key people, women in our community who's leading this wonderful effort. So I think it's super important, man, to be able to expose students. Yeah. So and just shout out to the team. I have some of the most exceptional, brightest. It's an honor to serve alongside of them, man. Even though I tell them they let me be higher up on the org chart, but we all know who's doing the heavy lifting. So
I love
shout out to my manual team. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a beautiful collaboration that I think when education and industry work at its best, when it's in collaboration of, here's a project, how do we get the education system involved, also preparing these young people to maybe see themselves in their work, where you're creating and supporting your next generation of employees or team members who are going to contribute to the workforce. That's awesome. That really is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think just kind of to that industry and the school connection and those partnerships, it really drives our work. And so in our space of career and tech ed, we're required and we're fortunate enough to have advisory meetings and people on our advisory committee to help shape. And so our advisory committee is, you have industry folks there, post-secondary, educators, parents, and all those folks. And what we find is that once we get them into the room, and so for the state of Missouri, we have kind of our approved IRC, industry recognized credential, that the state recognizes. And through the work over the years, we were able to get those industry recognized credentials that employers really deem that had value. Because, several years back, there were some things on that list that industry partners were like, what is this? What did you guys come up with this at, right? And now it is very much so just, involving our industry partners and community partners to say, okay, this is our scope of work. These are the industry recognized credentials that are if a person comes to us, that we will value, and that will make them more competitive and more employable. Also looking at stuff like, how do we shape our curriculum? What are the things that we're going to cover inside of our classrooms? Looking at our lab space and being able to shape it based on kind of industry pieces. Now, and it also is one of those scenarios where we say, okay, we're an educational institution and we don't have the resources to get this really cool machine that does this one little specific thing. It would be great if you all would donate it or allow our students to be able to get in that space and have some at-bats or some access to the equipment and or technology. And so, we're really excited about that. It's probably one of the most transformational things in education, at least in my world, has been just really engaged in the business and industry sector. It's been game changers because we'll be able to kind of leapfrog and stay current, which is really important.
Outstanding. Are you seeing more requests from industry around skill based hiring? Like if you bring me someone with this skill set, then we can take it from there kind of.
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely seeing that. Again, kind of which speaks to kind of our, helping our students to be a lot more, ready for kind of that next step in life after they graduate with these market value assets. So it's definitely giving them those skills, and those training pieces. But it's also, hey, we need to put. It's important, and some feedback we've been getting from employers. It's important that you create scenarios in an environment where students are pushed to think creatively and outside the box, because everything is not going to have this neat bow at the end, and cannot look at a complex situation and come up with a myriad of solutions or options. Can I be agile and flexible in my thinking, and not be discouraged because 2 + 2 was supposed to equal 4, but you got like an A and another variable in there, and it's something else, right?
Yeah.
But it's understanding what that process is, that design thinking, how do we solve problems, and how do we approach things from a creative standpoint. Now, obviously, if we're looking at construction, right, you need to know how to look at blueprints and measure and cut and swing a hammer and all these other things, but also that project management, and how do you figure out within certain constraints to get a job done. And so that's where that creative thinking comes in with those skills. And then the other piece that we've been getting feedback around is really those soft skills as well, right? Like, how do we give them kind of the soft skills, that level of kind of professionalism, and what does it look like in that space, and incorporating stuff like grit and, how do you persist through to and through your level of frustration, because a lot of times on the other side of that frustration, that's where the magic is. And so those are all the things that we've been employers have been telling us, and we've been doing our level best to really take heed to what they're saying.
That's outstanding, man. Few more questions we'll wrap up, man. You spoke about your team, and I know there's a diversity component there with women leaders, in administration, and minorities, African American, as an African American male, and CTE director. Man, what do we need to do to increase the number of African American males or women in leadership in CTE? Any thoughts on that? How do we get people from, maybe going from the classroom to thinking or considering these positions, or even if you have some advice or thoughts around the districts, like what, as a district who may see some high potentials, how do you cultivate those individuals or nurture those individuals?
I think first, representation matters, right? And so the
Yeah.
more we in these spaces. I remember there were times, and I hate to say it, where I'll be in certain spots, and as a director or a principal or somebody like that, and they automatically thought that I was somebody else of a lesser position or something like that. And so those are the things you have to just kind of grapple with at times. But I think the biggest thing is having that exposure and being there, and being willing to come alongside and mentor and take the time to say, hey, young man, young lady, I see you. Here's what I do, and bringing them into your space, right? And being a part of and being their personal network that say, okay, this is how you get in this particular industry. But then also let them know that it has tremendous value, and it can be fun at times. Yes, it can be incredibly stressful, but I think we need to, education in general has a branding issue as well. Like, you have a ton of people who kind of their first thoughts would never be to go into education at all and being leaders in this space. But it's showing them that although it can be challenging at times, it is the most rewarding work that we possibly can do, and overall show the impact. So again, that representation and mentorship, but then also it's pushing against, it's holding people accountable for stuff in terms of looking at how we will go about recruiting. Where are we going to recruit our talent? That's important. How are we going about recruiting our talent? Who's going to do it? what is our mechanism? What is our systems? Are we really seeking out kind of that diverse workforce? And so I know for us, just even in the career and tech ed space, within our district, we sit on kind of that. I sit on the equity committee, right? And then we look at stuff like everything from just how we hire and recruit talent to our district, but also just stuff like, helping to shape different rules and policies that we're going to send to the board for approval. How do we go about doing certain things? And so it is work. And then and it's a heavy lift because it's one of those things of when you're one of, you know, of you're one of one. There's not a lot of people that's gonna come in that space looking like you, and you have to be a good ambassador. And that's the honest truth. I think about a lot of times when I go into these spaces and the higher up I get in kind of this leadership role, particularly in CTE, I'm one of few of directors of color, black men in that space, and so it's being there and being authentically who you are. And I show up in that space as Chris Mcneil every single time. And sometimes, you got to kind of push and create this opportunity to have honest dialogue. Say, hey, there's a problem here. If we look around in the room, why is it that it's like this? So let's have some conversation. What are we doing? How can we change? How can we make it something a bit more appealing for people to come? So I know it's a very complex, answer, man, and that's a heavy question, man. And I'm willing to bet your viewers, will chime in and put stuff in the chat and say some different things that I missed. But man, I just think about my own experience, how I got into this role, and it was somebody creating a space for me and seeing me and say, you have potential. I was a teacher. I remember I got into the role in March of 2000. It was March of 2008. And then so that very next year, I get a phone call from the principal. He said, Mcneil, where you at? I said, I'm in my class, boss. He said, well, you're supposed to be in the leadership meeting. I said, excuse me? He's like, yeah, you're the department head. I said, so this is I ain't even did a full year. And he said, well, yeah, we saw something in you. We're gonna give you the opportunity. We know you don't know a lot, but if you're willing, right, we'll help grow and groom you and give you the skills. And it was that early confidence. Did I have it all? Heck no, man. I didn't know nothing. But it was that confidence and that ability to be at the table. They gave me a seat at the table that I was incredibly humbled to be at, intimidating in some instances, but man, just being at the table, I learned so much about leadership, about education, and it's giving people a seat at the table who maybe even be a little rough around the edges. Man, I was rough. I didn't know all the education acronyms and what stuff meant and who this and who that. And shout out to I call her my career angel, Shonda Gray. Holy smokes. That she is an extraordinary woman who taught me so much, and she is the opportunity guru. She just gives you an opportunity to sit at the table. And so, Miss Shonda Gray, if you're watching, if you happen to see this, I honor you today because you created opportunity and space for me to grow, and you saw me. So thank you.
Yeah, I will make sure that Shonda sees this when we move to the edit, because as you were talking, I'm reflecting back on, you were like, '08. That was like one of my first big school district partnerships was with SLPS.
Yep.
And it was Shonda and Mr. Frank
Yep.
Logan.
Frank Logan.
As the CTE directors of SLPS at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from the other side, and I'm speaking as coming from as an African American vendor, showing up into the district with books with my first the Young Entrepreneur's Guide to Success.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent us on the speaking tour of all of the business classes in the school district and bought books for all of the classes. And you're right when you're saying that confidence is, I think, That's crazy. We were kind of starting around the same time, man. That's so
Yeah.
crazy to think now, like where you're at and for us that was one of our first large school district partnerships to be now in over 600 school districts across the country, not knowing what that would turn into, but for someone to show the confidence and then for you to see the impact, it's like, oh, there is impact here. And clearly people keep saying that about you, Chris. people, you know, people keep saying, but it's like, I think it is you show up in a way that truly is authentic, that resonates, your passion, your heart for the community, and for education is just all over you, which brings me to books and barbers and I mean I see if we're watching this, the beard game is something serious here right now.
Well, thank
But
you, brother.
winning winning the Wahl Man of the Year for your community work and taking home, $20,000, 25,000 to push those efforts further. Talk to me about the literacy and the importance of what you're doing with books and barbers and elementary school kids.
Man, it is absolutely a dream come true. I'm still kind of sitting on cloud nine from winning the award, and it has, the resources, the financial resources that we got being expanded is great. But I just think about just what kind of barbering meant to me just growing up. So my grandmother was a licensed cosmetologist, and so she did that, and so we always had hair care products around the house. And then my mom, single parent mom, didn't have a resource to send me to the barber shop. And the first pair of clippers that was in the house was a pair of Wahl home haircutting clippers. It was a little black and white pair with the different guards, the different multicolored guards, and just learn how to cut hair just at home, just for necessity. But then finding out what giving a haircut can mean to people, right? It's more than just, giving them fresh fade, but just the confidence that comes from that. And you have an opportunity to really, speak life into young people, young men, as you're cutting them their hair, because they're gonna sit in your chair, they're gonna be attentive for at least 30 minutes, right? So,
Yep.
they sitting down. And so I started, man, I've been cutting hair in classrooms since '08, just cutting hair. And it kind of started with a kid who was getting bullied and teased, and I saw myself in that kid, and was able to, call the mom up and say, hey, I cut hair. I'm his marketing teacher. Would it be okay for me to do that? And then over the course of time, when I became a principal, every school I'd been at and had a barbershop open up at each school. And it's just been one of those things for me that it's a way to just serve, right? It's mixing what I absolutely love to do in service. And so incorporating the literacy component is something that just kind of naturally emerged from that place, right? It's being able to sit down and talk about books and creating this environment, like this barbershop environment where you can glean wisdom and information from the people that will come into the shop. And so it's creating this environment for students. The literacy piece is this. It's not only just kind of giving them mechanics of reading and all that piece, but it's really hoping to hopefully cultivate the love for reading. There was a quote that I heard that was transformational. It talks about, it says that reading is dreaming with your eyes open. Man, when you can, maybe I can't go to the Congo, but I can read about it, right? Maybe, I can't go to the moon as an astronaut. I can read about it, and I can read about the people that did it, and it can open up your world so much bigger, right? And I was a kid who struggled also with literacy. Man, I was a struggling reader. I don't know about you when you was growing up. So when I was growing up, you had those reading groups, and they were all like birds, like you got the robins and the blue jays. Man, I struggled so much in reading. I was probably the crows. I was like the ones in the back. And so, but it was only until, I realized that I didn't read because I didn't like the stuff that I was reading. I didn't see myself in it. It didn't capture my imagination. It didn't capture my attention enough to be able to kind of develop that reading stamina. right? And so it's giving the students those opportunities as well with the books that they're interested in. So we're doing books like we're doing a Percy Jackson series.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the books that we're doing is either going to have a video component or audio component, right? So even some of my struggling readers, we're gonna have an audio piece, so you can kind of read along, and we have some conversations about the text and take away the ambiguity, give them the tools like this is how you decode text. This is what that means. Here's what you hear the word protagonist. Here's what a protagonist is. Here's what an antagonist is. Here's how you break down a book. And the more you talk about the text and be familiar with it, and it's not something that we can look at a 300-page novel that we gonna get through. It's gonna be fun. And then like just I remember, and I hate to admit it, but this is gonna be a blessing to maybe some people. Man, I didn't read my first book from cover to cover till I was a senior in college, man. From cover to cover, just reading for pure enjoyment. Now I've always did the technical reading and reading for the information, but to read a book from cover to cover just for the sheer enjoyment, like I'm just reading this book. You know what I mean? And so, if I can create that love of learning and literacy for the students, that they become, ferocious readers, or for even a kid who's not going to become that, who absolutely loves to read all the time. We could take away the fear away from it. Like you can read, right? And here's how you go about going to do it. So, man, just really, really, really fortunate, man, just to be able to have this program. We provide those free haircuts for students, also the mentorship, and kind of have that literacy component. And we incorporate just right now we're working with just some fantastic barbers, student barbers. I got three young men, student barbers, who are part of our career and tech ed program, who are the student barbers and also the mentors. And man, they're some of the most remarkable young men. Let me shout them out: Jaden, Joe, and Yannick.
Yeah.
And they are just some world-class young men. And so we're really fortunate, man, just the true blessing, just to serve in that way. And being able to get the resources and the recognition for it, man, is just, I tell my family, I said, call me Wahl Man of the Year.
Go Wahl Man of the Year. I love it, man. I think that's powerful. Because that's something you didn't have to do, but you still you see the need, and I think it's the compassion behind it and recognizing is not, as a teacher, a principal, or a district leader, is not just this one role. It's like, no, we're serving this whole student, this whole child. Like, how do we really support them with everything they need? And I think this is a great community example, man. And salute to the young brothers who are helping with actually providing the haircuts too. Last question. I ask everyone this question. What's your vision for the future of career tech education?
Yeah, man, it simply for us is to create, remarkable programs that help shape and creates the next leaders of tomorrow, right? That's it, right? How do we create these programs and opportunities and exposure and touch points to be able to, impact our future in a positive direction, right? And so it looks like world-class facilities. It looks like, more business and industry partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like more funding. It looks like, really having everybody in the country, certainly, but everybody in the world understands what CTE is and who's it for. And we just have that overall buy-in for it. I think that's my vision, that we grow bigger and stronger, and we be more impactful as an overall community of educators.
I love it. I love it. Dr. Chris Mcneil, if someone wants to get in touch with you to learn more about how to bring Books and Barbers to their school district, they want to bring you in for a professional development session to work with their leaders or something of that sort, how do we get in touch? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, so you want to go to, my email address is booksandbarbers@gmail.com. I'm on all the social platforms, so you can find me, Books and Barbers, on Facebook, and just kind of reach out. we'll definitely we'd love to do some work at your space.
Love it. If you enjoyed this episode, don't be selfish. Share it with a friend, a colleague. A lot of gems were dropped here, from connecting with community partners, expanding your CTE pathways. I mean, just so many gems to even the grandmother wisdom of honoring your word and keeping a
Yes,
clean
indeed.
name. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it and like and subscribe. And as I always say, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.